because every single night we were changing an engine. And we could change an engine on an L1011 or 767 or a 75 in one shift, working through lunch. You take a quick break, and then in the morning have enough time to run the engine outside the hangar, and then go home.
How big of a crew?
About 8 of us, and that's hustling.
Yeah.
The night goes quick when you're doing that.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of cases too, aren't those engines leased? These companies that just specialize.
Yeah, you can have leased engines, but these were leased aircraft, and the engines were.
Power by the hour.
What's that?
It's called power by the hour.
Yeah. We used to hang spare engines on 747s. I've done that. That's kind of cool. The aircraft, the 747
Yeah,
has
transport them around, yeah.
it has a spare pylon between two engines. I don't know if there's one on each side or only one. You can't fly with two, but I want to think it's only on one side. But you can take an engine like this and bolt it on under the wing. So you'll go out, you'll see, you might get on a revenue flight. When I say revenue, I mean a paying passenger. And look at your 747, it's got 5 engines on it. 2 on one side and 3 on the other. And it's not hooked up, it'll sit there and windmill.
Well,
And it beats putting it on a truck. Ship it.
Dragging through the rail.
Laying to your door. There's the APU. That's a big one too. That's a big APU. I'm used to most APUs to be probably just about sit on this table.
What's an APU?
Auxiliary power unit. It is a generator. It will produce electricity, AC and DC, and it produces pneumatic air under pressure. It is a jet engine. It's not used for thrust, it's just a generator. And we tap pneumatic air. That's what this cover is. That's pneumatic air. And it's big because this airplane can sit on the ground with the engines off, and they'll run this APU, and they take that compressed air and they can run the air conditioning packs, air conditioning systems, and cool or heat the aircraft, depending on whatever it needed. And as well as tap the electricity off it. Run the cargo doors, have lights on. Yes.
Do they do bleed air starts with APUs like this?
No, these typically have electric starter.
Like, I mean, will they use the APU to do bleed air start on another turbine?
Yes,
They would,
yes. That's the only way to get this aircraft started. You've got to have the APU start. There is an option, you can hook into the belly on, I think, pretty much all of these aircraft. If your APU is a shot, you can get a pneumatic cart and hook it up in last ditch effort.
Well, they hook the hover cart to air turbine starter instead of the lab or something.
Oh, really? Somebody tried, and they.
Yeah, and the engines are right next to each other, and to me they look different. Not to mention the blue stuff that's dripping out of the lab.
I wouldn't even expect that you could even connect it.
It's stupid
No,
that they
I don't
would
know
do
why
that.
they put it right next to the air turbine starter, but
Maybe
it's
the guy
there.
made an adapter.
And yeah, that flight was.
This is a dumb question. Do they always keep them that clean?
This is brand new. This is a
Okay.
brand new airplane. See, they haven't even attached this, finished attaching the tail section, and this is going in. So it's not going to be particularly dirty. You get a little oil vapor in there in this compartment, but generally there's a fair amount of airflow through there. They do get dirty. So that's a new airplane. They're in the process of assembling it. And it's so funny, I'm looking at how far back that engine mounts. There's gotta be so much torque on that, all that weight forward of your mount. Oh, I think I know which one this is.
Airbus and Boeing were always upset
Oh, good.
with Pratt & Whitney.
Oh, well, they're, what, they're,
Always
He
behind.
lost his nose gear on takeoff.
Is that
how many,
15?
how many they order at a time?
F-15.
I think so.
He's got some missiles in there too, look at that.
Yikes.
20 a month. There's again about 60 days.
Wow.
And then Ron goes in and selling at 5,000.
There was,
They were always great.
I had one a while back where it was an A-10. I want to think it was an A-10 Warthog. A wild pig got out and charged a nose gear. And it was a big pig, and it took out the nose gear. Wow. It was delayed.
Yeah, I hope that pilot was able to eject.
So where they moved the plant to?
West Palm Beach for
Oh, okay. So what, I mean, did they already have some production going there and they just expanded or?
Yeah.
Consolidated,
Yeah.
expanded?
What is that thing?
That's a drone.
APs.
I forget which one that is. Which is it?
Global Hawk.
Global Hawk.
That's a big one.
Stuff like that.
It's supposed to replace the Z2.
Particular ones.
It didn't.
I was actually
It's a nightmare for
selected a sensor
It's a
operator.
Russian too, isn't it? It's gotta be Russian.
No,
But I
yeah,
ended
of
up having
course.
to bow out. It took me like 2 years to get the interview. And they said they were ready.
Flying guppy.
By the 2 years later, by the time I got the interview, they were asking. It was a reserve position.
Lots of time in the desert.
Yeah, and I was okay with that. They were looking for 2 weeks as a reservist, 2 weeks a month commitment. But then 2 years later, when I finally got the interview and the job, they said, oh, by the way, it's 7 days a week, 10 and 12 hours a day. And I was in a custody battle. And, sorry, yeah, I can't do it.
No can do.
I would have loved to. It would have been great. I mean, forever.
What
Forestry
is
Service,
that?
Border Patrol.
SR-71.
That is not the SR-7.
Oh,
That's like,
That's the French one.
Oh, that's a friend, oh, Concord?
yeah,
that's
constant.
a Valkyrie.
That's a Valkyrie.
That's a Valkyrie?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Should've-
I do know what the
Failed NASA experiment. Or is that the Russian one on the side?
Oh, yeah, it could be a
Russian
TU-144.
This is Tyler's unusual aircraft.
That's like
What?
No, somebody knows somewhere.
And it's like,
That's 2 airplanes.
Okay.
And in fact, I think they're, yeah, that's, there might even be, yeah, there's 2 airplanes.
That's kind of crazy in that way.
That's the Diageo?
That is one I think is one of the most amazing.
The Flying Guppy.
Yeah, look at your cockpit right here.
so is that like just full of helium up there? Or what?
No, it's
No,
just
that's
flying
what they
fish.
put rocket sections in, large rocket sections, and they my understanding, they completely disconnect. They have to undo flight control cables and all the connections in here. I mean, it's designed to be
Unless it
done,
opens like this then.
The whole front.
but do they, I think they completely remove it, don't they? Or it folds?
Oh, no, I've seen it on a documentary
Just
about that one.
shell out.
It opens up towards the side, but it has its own wheel, so it's pushed by an electrical powered wheel.
Okay,
So as soon as unlatch it on the side, you pop the wheel down, and just that single engine pushes the whole front towards the
Okay.
side.
You can always Google it.
Oh,
maybe it hinges out.
From Kiwi.
They have the one here in the aerospace.
Jimmy Doolittle.
Is it just for the racing?
Is that the name? No, is it, what's the name on that?
A craft like that,
Very clear.
a craft like that, what was the intention behind something
Racing.
like that?
Yeah.
I'm still
Racing?
not flying it.
That's all I built it for, is when they were
GP
doing
Racer,
racing
yeah.
back in the freaking.
Super hard to fly.
It looks like
40s
it would be
or 30s,
very,
I don't
It was hard to fly.
That's British.
There's a Victor bomber.
oh.
There's one at the Miramar Air Show one time.
Which
that's
one?
the C-130.
That's
been a
like
lot
a
of-
British thing.
Been all over the world on
It's got
that.
something on the, what is that in the front there?
And, you know, they generally there's just weather or some type of advanced. Normally, this thing doesn't bow down. The H's we had were more like this angle. You know, they tapered up, but they still had this big old nose on them, and that was weather radar. If you see these mounts here, those are associated with this point here. Those are what they call the ADS arms, air delivery system. This had these whiskers, big metal arms that pivoted here, and that was their stop. And then right here where this panel was an actuator. So these things would actually sweep out in front of the airplane, out in front. And they could pick things up off the ground.
I seen them do it once at Miramar. They picked a guy up.
Yeah, and I'm amazed, surprised they do that because that is pretty dangerous.
It did. It was a long time ago.
Why would they want to?
James
But
Bond.
there was,
There's
It
two
was a-
arms. They come out like this, and then the guy flies into there's a cable on a balloon,
Yeah.
and he catches that
there's
thing,
some great movie, I wanna think it's.
Thunderball.
and it pulls him into the back. of
It
it.
was-
Sean Connery
So
gets
the
picked
guy's on the
up
ground,
in
he's
the
sitting there, and
Thunderball.
it's
They
like,
did, and they probably
did
did.
it.
There was also one, it was an old war movie, it was like
I seen it.
Tora, or one of those
Oh, is that right?
old
Okay.
movies. But they get this Japanese officer, they set him on the ground and he's got this vest on, they pull his chute, this balloon goes up, and he looks at it like, what the hell are you Americans doing? You know, you're friggin' stupid. He's sitting there in the middle of this concrete with this little balloon up over his head. And all of a sudden the C-130 comes through and the guy just goes, he goes straight up and then arcs behind the airplane. And then once he comes up under the fuselage, the cable, and they get on the back, if you remember my first pictures, where it showed guys standing in the back of the airplane with the sky, that's where they are. And they hook that cable and they draw him back into the back of the airplane.
Oh, man.
But I've heard there was a lot of back injuries.
Yeah, a lot of things can go wrong on that.
Go from 0 to like, I don't know, that fast. I'm just trying to hop this.
It's another way to, I was hoping to a profile of that one.
What's that?
That's another weather radar, weather aircraft.
I mean, they used to do the opposite of that too, right? With those things that like slide tanks out of the back of them while they're still right off the runway. And I know they had an accident one time because the thing kind of like hung up in the plane. And
Yeah, you know, I was on 130s for a lot of years. We did a lot of stuff with those 130s. We did airdrops, we did pararescue, we did fought fires. We had these big giant tanks that we would load in the airplane, and we would open up the airplane, and these big old tubes would fold down, and we would dump what was called Phosgene. It's water and a mixture of chemicals and a dye and a lot of chicken manure, and we would dump that on fires during fire
Is something like that, like made out of carbon fiber, or what's that made out of?
This is fiberglass.
Yeah. So that,
It's going to be this old an airplane. It's not going to be carbon. It's just going to be fiberglass mesh molded in. This is I think the odd thing about that is it's got a cockpit way in the front.
Oh, yeah, huh.
Okay, so we are at. This
Wow.
is at 7 o'clock. Is it almost 7?
Yep.
I think we went over. Did we go over? No, this class is till 7:50. I still got you.
Oh, that's cool. Is that another type of
Sure,
trailer?
retainer.
Or retainer.
Is that too? Mahogany. Alright. Here.
EX. You gotta see that.
Leave it to the
Between
Germans.
D and the I. They're the horrible. You don't want to talk first. I said DX. Wow.
Is that a smiley face on the front of it?
Yeah, there's two of them. Right there. Right next to each other.
I'm not sure what that line would be. I can't imagine if it's possible.
Oh.
That's Russia.
Now this
Yeah,
thing,
big time.
I do remember a little bit about this one.
Something
This was a watercraft. It didn't fly, but it would use ground effect. So it would actually get off the water by a few feet by using ground effect, compressing the air against the water, kind of like a hydrofoil.
So there's no contact with water. It's
It
just
did.
air.
These are floats, but as it picked up speed and started to plane, it
Oh.
would actually raise off the water. But it didn't have enough wing space or lift area, so it was using ground effect.
So it was, in a sense, a real hovercraft.
Yeah, it looks
like
Russian.
it's Russian.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hovercraft, but different principle. It was,
Well, I mean, not only that.
What's the difference between the hovercraft?
the hovercraft produces its air, like the hockey game that you're kicking around. It produces the air through fans, and as it exits, it creates a cushion. And a hovercraft pretty much touches the surface almost. This got a few feet up, and it was actually using the air through its forward motion to create lift.
And the Russians built a giant version too, some kind of a surface effect thing. It had like 4 giant jet engines on it. Same thing, it was just for the water. I mean, it was,
So it's efficient.
was fast, I guess, until you run into something.
But if it stops, say if it stops in the middle of the ocean, it wouldn't.
Well, I mean, you couldn't.
It's like
I don't
assume it
know.
would
Would
float.
you have a problem with just
Yeah, it would float.
Long easy.
works fine.
Easy, but it's not.
Oh my gosh.
Our family are here.
No? You're having fun?
I have a friend that I just ruined.
And what's the purpose of
That's okay, but.
What's the
most of
purpose?
guys- Yeah.
that?
Maybe not. I can't
Seven's
tell.
free.
Not by the door.
Yeah.
It's a freaking thing, and
Yeah.
it's like bolted right there.
Those little windows are 7.3 windows.
Yeah, just
That
look at
thing
the
crashed
the
in,
nose gear and
it's gonna fold in on top of it, you know?
7.6 has those nice
Say,
big windows.
You know, crash you occasionally,
Sure.
yeah, little things, you know? A lot of these
Oh
experiments.
my god. Fish.
There we go, there's some different. Then they say
It's cheap voltage, huh?
This is actually some strange stuff.
What happened to back a few years?
Globe Master.
That was like a firefighting tool. Wanna ride one of those? The flying boxcar?
Is that rotating?
Yeah, there's
Yeah, it's all.
yeah, Osprey.
They're right here.
I didn't know that.
I mean, rotate around.
Definitely carrier deployment.
They're trying to make a
Those are things that they name
board ship, huh?
No, that's the Osprey. They're all that way.
I don't know.
That one is lands in the water, if I'm not mistaken.
Amphibious experimental, that just sounds all wrong.
I've seen pictures of guys fishing out of the cockpit of those.
Yeah, that was wrong.
Yeah, it's probably fun.
Still need to finish paying, man.
Well, a bunch of these airplanes.
So what's up with the extended nose?
You know, it's a radar, and they need it out beyond the structure, and it also has effect the whatever device they're using sometimes needs that much room.
$85.
So they're like sitting on
$85.
He's in Australia.
Who's the guy that's running one of those jet? They made a little jet engine.
That's a lighter than air. That's a dirigible.
Do they use APUs?
I don't know what kind of little jet is it.
It's got a downward
I can
fan.
imagine it didn't have to be very big compared to, you know, for a
I
truck.
didn't see that actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Boeing or Lockheed Martin.
It wasn't APU because it was a pure jet. You know, you can build it with a prop like that.
Okay.
Or they made a little jet engine.
I've only got 7 more pictures,
Jet engine.
frames of this one. So this should look a little like what we were doing last night. Ohm's law. This is volts, this is current, this is resistance. I should have one of those over there, I do. I was just teaching my son this last night because mass, volume, density It's the same, but I was teaching the very same pyramid. So for volts, current times resistance gives me volts. I cover, if I want resistance, I cover it. And so volts over current gives me what I'm missing. And if I want current, I cover that, and it's volts divided by resistance.
Then it's current times resistance gives volts. Right?
Current times resistance gets volts, and then volts divided by resistance gives me current, and volts divided by current gives me resistance.
So just like you said, just cover which one.
I just
you
cover
want.
whichever one I want. And these two I multiply, and this one, if I cover the R, it's volts over current, or volts over resistance. That's the way I've got those set up. Okay, the two fundamental properties of current and voltage are related by a third property known as resistance. In any electrical circuit, when voltage is applied to it, a current will result. The resistance of the conductor will determine the amount of current that flows under the given voltage. In most cases, the greater the circuit resistance, the less current. If the resistance is reduced, then the current will increase. This relationship is linear in nature and is known as Ohm's law. When they say it's linear, if I double the resistance, the current's going to cut in half. Resistance is like when I start to close the valve on the sink. As I close it, current and flow is going to reduce. So they're linear in the sense that if I cut the voltage in half, which is pressure, my current's going to cut in half. If I double resistance, my current cuts in half. So they're all pretty well interrelated. So here's I think my example. I've got 12 volt power supply. I have 1.2 amps of current. I've got 10 ohms of resistance, and I think I've got a follow-on picture. Yeah. What I've done in that second image is I've doubled the voltage. So by doubling the voltage, I increase the pressure. I'm doubling the pressure. I haven't changed the resistance, but the current doubles. So that's what they mean by linear. And it's common sense. If I open the water at my house and I can fill a pail of a bucket in a minute, if I double the pressure into the house, I'm going to fill that bucket in half the time. By having a linearly proportional characteristic is meant that if one unit in the relationship increases or decreases by a certain percentage, the other variables in the relationship will increase or decrease by the same percentage. An example would be if the voltage across the resistor is doubled, then the current through the resistor doubles. Remember, current is flow. It's like water flow. And resistance would be like a valve or a dam, or any way we slow or create resistance, we make an effort to slow that flow. So when we increase resistance, flow reduces. Here are pictures of typical resistors. They're showing less resistance and more resistance. So a resistor is a semiconductor. We are creating resistance to flow. The higher the ohms, the greater the resistance. The greater the resistance, the less current. These are our color bands, and we're going to learn a little bit about those in another evening. But these colors each represent a number.
So when you decrease the resistance, and then after the resistor, it goes back to its normal currents as flow, or
It
does
won't. It would be the same way if I had. Here's an example. I'm trying to think of plumbing like in your house.
So, but you're saying that it will stay with whatever the resistor.
It'll stay as I add more resistance. If I turn on the water at my sink and the drain went out into the yard, that I would have the same amount of flow. Whatever's flowing into the yard would be what's coming out of the faucet. So if I were to start to close the faucet, which would be increasing resistance, then the water out into the yard is also going to decrease.
Right.
In a series circuit, when everything has to flow, like right here, here's my river. If I start to restrict or close the flow, it's going to affect everything. It's going to even affect what's in front. and what's behind. The whole thing starts to slow down. In a parallel circuit, that's not necessarily true. We'll look at parallel circuits in the next few days. Resistance of a conductor. While wire of any size or resistance value may be used, the word conductor usually refers to material that offers low resistance to current flow. And the word insulator describes materials that offer high resistance to current. There's no distinctive dividing line between the two, conductors and insulators. Under the proper condition, all types of materials conduct some current. Conduct some current. Materials offering a resistance to current will flow midway between the best conductors and the poorest conductors. Insulators are sometimes referred to as a semiconductor. That's kind of word funny, but they're saying you can have a really good insulator with minimal resistance, minimal loss, and you can have an insulator which you're trying to prevent electrons from moving through. And then you can have a material that's in between, where you don't have a total free flow, but you're slowing it, like the resistors. The unit used to measure resistance is the ohm, and that's the omega sign we use to show ohms. There it is. In mathematical formulas, the capital letter R refers to resistance. The resistance of a conductor and the voltage applied to it determine the number of amps of current flowing. So the resistance and the voltage, right here, voltage and resistance affects the amount of current. The amount of current and the voltage, well, resistance is usually fixed. You know, it depends on the material we're flowing through. So I was going to go back into the linear aspect of that, how one affects the other, and they rely on each other. But this is true. The resistance, the voltage, and the amount of resistance affects the current, how much flows. The resistance of a metallic conductor is dependent on the type of conductor material. So here is resistivity. These are in order of the least amount of resistance. So silver is our best conductor.
Is it more expensive? Is that why they don't use as much?
Yeah.
Why is it more expensive? Because
They're not showing gold, but gold is, I don't know where gold is, but it's going to be up here.
It's below copper.
Is it below copper?
Yes.
Okay. I knew it was a good, and that was, you know, I was mentioning the other day, copper is a pretty good conductor, but it doesn't handle the heat as well, and I don't think as far as the flexibility is as durable as copper or whatever else we might use. But aluminum's cheaper. So resistivity is ohm meters at 20. So this is ohms per meter, I think, is the best way to describe it. I'm not going to test you on this. At 20 Celsius, and they've got a temperature in there because the temperature can affect how current flows. So if you've heard of superconductivity experiments, when they're trying to get the best absolute, they're usually super chilling it to try to get the material as cold as possible to reduce, to increase its efficiency. Reduce its resistivity. Okay, the resistance of a metallic conductor is inversely proportional to the cross-section area. Hold that thought. If the cross-sectional area of a conductor is doubled, the resistance to current flow will be reduced in half. So right here, here's a couple of examples. They're saying 2 feet of, maybe this is copper, or whatever material this is, it may not matter. But at 2 feet are offering 2 ohms of resistance. So if I cut the same amount of material in half, I have 1 ohm of resistance. So essentially this material is giving me 1 ohm per foot. So if I have 5 feet of this material, I'm going to have 5 ohms of resistance. And all materials, that's where we were getting to the resistivity, where we showed the other materials. All of these conductors do offer some resistance. And ideally, we don't really want that. But now, if this is offering at 2 feet of this material 2 ohms of resistance. If I make it twice as thick, twice the mass, the resistance will be cut in half. Think of it as a pathway and we're all walking through it. If I double it, we can all get through in half the time because we've created more space, a greater pathway. So we'll see a little bit of this as we go on, and I don't recall. I don't think there's anything. I'm pretty sure there's nothing testable on that. And that's all I have for this. So I am done with the lecture. Hopefully that was fun. I saw some people sleeping.